Welcome back, Honors. So we left off in class talking about the basics of Egyptian society in ancient Egypt, their location, climate, geography, things like that. And we were wrapping up, or in the middle of talking about their religious system. And so where we left off, we had just finished talking about how they originally had two supreme gods, Amun and Ra, and then later on Egyptian priests are going to merge the two of them together and create Amun-Ra, right? And then there's going to become a giant offshoot of smaller and lesser gods, such as Isis, Osiris, Anubis, people like that. Now, the job of Osiris was actually a very, very important one, and it actually comes from one of their mythological stories. Now, there was actually this so Osiris has two roles. Osiris's roles are the god of the Nile, so he controls the flooding. He's also the god of the afterlife and judgment, all right? So the Osiris story is a really, really cool one, and it all centers around two individual, certain people, Osiris and his brother Set, all right? So anyway, then there's Set, okay? And Set is a lot like Horus, wears the head of a bird, but his big thing about it is he's actually the god of evil, right? Terrible trespasses and things like that. So Set is really, really uncomfortable with the fact that Osiris is actually becoming the god king of the Egyptians. And the Egyptians are beginning to love him, and they are beginning to idolize him, and they are beginning to look to him after they look to Ra. And so Osiris at this point didn't really have a job. He was more like the king of man, right? So Set decides to throw a party. And Set's party is, he goes, well, I got an idea. I'll just kill Osiris at this party. It won't be a big deal. So he invites people that are on his side, and then when Osiris gets there, he has this giant sarcophagus in the middle of the room. And some of you are like, oh my God, what is he going to do? Is he just going to stab him in the face? And they're like, nah, actually, it's a little bit more cunning than that. So what Set does is he takes Osiris and he says, look, check this thing out. I made it for you. It's perfectly built to your body. You could lay down in it right now and be super comfortable. Why don't you try out this giant coffin? And Osiris willingly goes, oh yeah, sure, Set, no big deal. And so he lays down in the coffin, and Set slams it shut, locks it, and then throws him into the Nile, right? Now, all the while there, well, of course Osiris is going to die. And then all the while there, though, Isis, who is his wife, right, was really, really upset because also when Set threw him in there before that, he didn't just stop there. He also chopped him up into a bunch of little pieces. So when Isis decided to command the floodwaters to bring all those pieces back, and when that happened, she built him back together. And so he is the god of the resurrection and the god of the afterlife, right? So, and that also has a lot to do with their mummification process, which we'll get into here in a minute. Because Isis had to rebuild him so that when he went into the afterlife, he actually had the necessary parts to be able to achieve the heavenly orders of the afterlife. So she believed to bring Osiris back to life with the flooding of the Nile, right? So now we have three things that were covered in that one mythological story. We have mummification processes, Osiris being built up as the god of judgment, and then also Isis being built up as the god of the seasonal floods, right? So very, very cool stuff. There's tons of them, right? Tons of them. For extra credit, what I want you to do for tomorrow, you don't have to do this, but I highly would, okay? So for extra credit tomorrow, go find an Egyptian myth that's not that one, and then also summarize it in about a paragraph, okay? Clip that onto the front of the myth itself, so print the myth out, summarize it in a paragraph, staple those two together, bang, I'll give you a free homework grade or something like that. All right, we'll figure it out. But extra credit assignment, so make sure that gets done. But let's keep going. Now, Egyptians in the afterlife continued a lot of different things that go along with that. So now that Osiris has become a part of the afterlife, he now also commands the idea of judgment, quote unquote. Right now, in the Christian mythology, we believe that after death, St. Peter is waiting, and he has a list of atonement, right? A list of all of the transgressions that one has done wrong. Now, the thing about the Christian way of looking at it, though, is that list is kind of you're either in or you're out. And the neat thing about it is that also bled into, that also comes from Jewish mythology, but it also, we believe, as historians, comes originally from the Egyptian mythology because it's very, very similar. Now, all of the ideas of the afterlife and how the gods were recorded is in this book called the Book of the Dead. All right, it's a very, very large slate book. It's actually really, really neat. But one of the biggest parts of it is the story of judgment. And the biggest character in that entire story is, biggest two characters anyway, are Anubis and Osiris. And Osiris, of course, is the one who does the judging, and Anubis is the usherer of the dead. So he's also the god of mummification. That's why he wears the head of the jackal, because they were scavengers. Remember, we were talking about in class how geography is so important to affecting the religious system of an ancient empire, because the ideas of perdition and hell are very, very dictated by the ideas of their geographic surroundings, right? Now, this is actually really cool. This is an inscription from one of the pyramid walls at Giza. This actually shows the judgment process. So what originally happens is Anubis brings you down into the underworld, right? And then what he does is he steps you over and he takes out your heart, your spiritual heart anyway, more like your soul, and he puts it on a scale. And you see this thing right here? That's actually called the feather of truth, right? So if your heart is lighter than that feather, that means that you have a light soul that has not been burdened by sin or injustice. And this guy right here, sitting right next to Anubis, that is the Death Eater, okay? He comes into play here in a second, but he's very, very cool. He's half lion, half alligator, and he's Osiris's pet, okay? Then, after that judgment, you are taken in front of Osiris by Horus, and then you are judged on whether your transgressions are worthy enough to go into their heaven, and their heaven is considered the, like in direct translation, it's called the happy field of food, which again, it's a major geographical impact thing, because if they are a desert people, of course their heaven would be considered a place of bountiful sustenance, right? So, continuing forward though, Osiris then judges you, right? Well, let's say hypothetically you weren't good enough to get into heaven. What's going to happen to you? Well, let's backtrack a minute real quick. The Death Eater, actually, that's his job, because the Egyptians didn't believe in a hell. They actually believed that it was more important for your soul to just be blinked out of existence, because the Death Eater would then consume you and eat you and then eradicate your soul from the earth. Cool stuff, right? So anyway, now, keep going forward though. There are tons of other Egyptian gods and goddesses, and in that extra credit assignment, I expect to hear about it a lot different ones of them. But so big four of them. Khnum is one. He is the god creator of people. He has the head of a ram, and he actually builds people out of individual pieces of clay and mud that he actually scoops out of the Nile and puts onto a potting wheel and builds you up, and then puts you into existence. It's very, very neat. He also works very, very closely with this guy, Bes, at the very, very bottom. Bes is a dwarf god of mischief and fertility. So if he's like living in your house, there's a good chance that your wife will become pregnant, but also there's a good chance that a bunch of stuff is going to break, because if anything actually falls over, they're like, oh, Bes at it again. So Thoth is another big one. He is the god of balance and intelligence, and he actually has the big, head of a crane. And then cats also were a major, major part of their mythology, because it has to do with the fact that they're guardians of the underworld. They were considered the gatekeepers of the underworld, down like as you pass in to their heaven. So that's why they actually believed in having domesticated cats as a very heavy form of society, and also wealthy society in particular. But there are tons and tons and tons of evidence of mummified cats and other animals that were mummified with pharaohs. And also, this is a really cool one. This is a mummified crocodile, which actually it either indicates the fact that they were very, very, it was a religious process due to the fact that the crocodiles are like, of course, inhabitant of the Nile, or it was possibly a pet, which actually is pretty cool when you think about it. And then that is Bes, right? This is a dwarf god of mischief and fertility. And I got one more thing to tell you before I let you go for the weekend. Y'all can go enjoy and watch the birds kick the daylights out of the Chiefs, right? So the God King concept, right? So we talked about their afterlife, the polytheistic origins of it. We talked about how geography has impacted their religion and the big players in their mythological system. But where does the king fall in that? Now, in Egyptian society, they were built upon what was called a theocracy, right? It's a government that is backed by religious ideals and tightly interwoven. So as a huge part of the bureaucratic system in Egypt were the priests, the scribes, and other different religious entities, because everyone believed that their god was actually an extension of their king, right? So Egyptians believed that pharaohs were blessed to rule by the gods, particularly Amun-Ra. That's why if you've ever seen in any type of ancient Egypt reincarnate cinema or television, you ever seen the eye makeup that pharaohs would wear is the dark black, and the lines go all the way over close to the ears, possibly something down. That's to symbolize the all-seeing eye of Ra. That's the idea that they themselves are Ra, embodied on earth, right? And they were considered a living God there with man. Now, we're going to stop there because it's a good place to end. Because tomorrow we're going to pick right back up and we're going to talk about Mott and their principles of balance and how they believe political rebellions were actually something sent by the gods, quote unquote. So but it's been nice. I hope y'all have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Honors, don't forget about that mythology assignment, right? Have a good one.